Purple moss squished under Pip's worn boots as he walked deeper into the forest than his parents ever let him go. The 7-year-old knew he would get in trouble, but he didn't care anymore. 3 months on this moon called Silvara 9, and he still hadn't found a single friend. The other families in Green Hollow Colony only had babies or teenagers, nobody his age who wanted to play his games. His parents were always busy with their research, staring at screens full of plant data and soil samples. They said this colony was important, that studying alien plants would help humanity understand new worlds. Pip just thought it was boring. Back on Earth's orbital station, he'd had 6 friends. Here he only had rocks and trees that glowed at night. The forest grew thicker around him. Strange birds with 4 wings chirped overhead, and insects the size of his thumb buzzed past his ears. His mother had told him these woods were safe during the day, but she also said never to go alone. Pip pushed through a curtain of hanging vines that sparkled with tiny lights. On the other side, he found something new. A cave opening sat in the hillside, barely tall enough for him to walk through without ducking. Dark water dripped from stones above the entrance, and strange claw marks scratched the rock on both sides. Pip had explored lots of caves near the colony, but never this one. It was too far out, past where the safety fence ended. He pulled out the small flashlight he always kept in his pocket and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness inside. The cave wasn't deep, maybe as long as his family's living quarters back at the colony, but something moved in the shadows at the far end. Pip froze. His heart hammered against his chest. The colony director had warned everyone about the creatures that lived on Silvara 9. Big flying reptiles with scales that glowed. Dangerous, she called them. Flame wings, the scientists named them. Nobody had ever gotten close to one without it flying away, but everyone agreed they looked scary. The shape in the darkness moved again, and Pip heard a small sound. Not a roar or a growl. It sounded like crying. Like something sad and hurt. He should run. He should turn around right now and sprint back to the colony and tell his parents. But something made him stay. Maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to be alone and scared in a strange place. "Hello?" Pip called out softly. "Are you okay?" The crying stopped. 2 glowing eyes opened in the darkness, each one the color of orange firelight. They were small eyes, not much bigger than Pip's own. The creature shifted, and Pip's flashlight beam caught scales that shimmered between red and gold. It was a flame wing, but tiny. No bigger than a large dog. A baby, Pip realized. And it looked terrified. The hatchling pressed itself against the cave wall, its wings tucked tight against its body. The glow from its scales flickered weakly like a dying candle. Pip could see its ribs through the thin scales on its belly. It was starving. "It's okay," Pip whispered, taking one slow step forward. "I won't hurt you." The hatchling's eyes followed his movement. It didn't run or attack. It just watched, breathing hard. Pip noticed its front leg was scratched and bleeding. A long cut that looked painful. "You're hurt," Pip said. He sat down on the cave floor, making himself smaller and less scary. "And hungry, I bet. Did your family leave you behind?" The creature made a soft warbling sound, almost like a question. Then to Pip's surprise, it copied his movement. It sat down too, still pressed against the wall, but sitting just like Pip was sitting. A smile spread across Pip's face. "You can understand me? Or maybe you're just playing." He waved his hand. The hatchling hesitated, then lifted one small wing in a gesture that almost matched his wave. Pip laughed. "You are playing." "Do you want to be friends?" The hatchling tilted its head, the way Pip had seen birds do when they were curious. Its scales glowed a little brighter, shifting to warmer colors. Orange and gold rippled across its body like water reflecting firelight. "I'm Pip," he said, pointing to himself. "Pip. And you need a name too." He thought for a moment, looking at the way the creature's scales glowed. "Ember. I'll call you Ember because you look like fire embers in a campfire." Ember made another warbling sound, this one less sad. The hatchling uncurled slightly, not quite relaxed but not quite as scared. Pip stood up slowly. "I'll come back, okay? I'll bring food. Don't be scared." As he backed toward the cave entrance, Ember watched him go. The hatchling's eyes stayed locked on Pip until he stepped out into the purple forest again. The walk back to Green Hollow felt different. Pip's mind raced with plans. He needed food, something an alien reptile would eat. Meat, probably. The colony cafeteria always had protein bars and dried meat strips. He could take some without anyone noticing. He would have to be careful. If anyone found out about Ember, they might hurt the hatchling. The colony director had made it clear that flame wings were considered threats. But Pip had seen the truth. Ember wasn't dangerous. Ember was just alone, just like him. For the first time since arriving on Silvara 9, Pip had a friend. He wasn't going to let anyone take that away. 2 weeks had passed since Pip first met Ember, and sneaking out had become easier each time. His parents thought he was just exploring the safe zones near the colony, burning off energy like any young boy would. They had no idea he was hiking nearly an hour into the deep forest every afternoon. Pip had learned a lot about his new friend in those 2 weeks. Ember loved the dried fish strips from the cafeteria but refused to eat anything with artificial flavoring. The hatchling's scales changed color with emotions, turning bright gold when happy, deep red when scared, and soft orange when content. The cut on Ember's leg had healed quickly once Pip brought antibiotic cream from the colony's medical supplies. Best of all, they had started playing games together. Today, Pip brought a rubber ball he'd found in the colony's recreation center. Nobody used it anymore since there were no other kids around. He bounced it against the cave wall, and Ember's eyes tracked the movement with intense focus. "Want to try?" Pip asked, rolling the ball toward the hatchling. Ember pounced on it with both front legs, then jumped back in surprise when it rolled away. The hatchling's wings flared out, scales flashing bright gold. Pip laughed at the startled expression on Ember's face. "It's okay, it won't hurt you. Watch." Pip picked up the ball and gently tossed it to Ember. "Catch it." The ball bounced off Ember's snout. The hatchling blinked, then made a sound that Pip swore was laughter, a musical trilling noise that echoed through the cave. Ember grabbed the ball in its mouth and brought it back to Pip, dropping it at his feet. "You want to play fetch?" "Okay." Pip threw the ball outside the cave entrance, and Ember bounded after it with surprising speed. The hatchling's wings spread wide as it ran, catching air and lifting slightly off the ground. They played fetch for nearly an hour, until both of them were tired and happy. Pip collapsed on the cave floor, breathing hard. Ember curled up next to him, scales glowing a warm orange that lit up the entire cave. "I wish you could come back to the colony with me," Pip said quietly, running his hand along Ember's smooth scales. They were warm to the touch, like sun-heated metal. "You'd like it there. We have a big yard where we could play better games." Ember lifted its head and made a soft questioning sound. The hatchling's eyes glowed as it looked at Pip, and something in that look made the boy feel understood. "But they'd be scared of you," Pip continued. "They think all flame wings are monsters. It's stupid. You're nicer than most of the adults I know." An idea struck him suddenly. "Wait here," he said, jumping to his feet. "I want to try something." He ran outside and gathered several of the glowing seed pods that grew on the purple trees. They were about the size of his fist and lit up when touched, pulsing with soft blue light. Pip had watched Ember play with them before, rolling them around the cave floor and batting them back and forth. "New game," Pip announced, coming back inside with an armful of pods. "It's called hide and seek, but better. I'll hide these all around the area and you have to find them. The trick is you have to find them before they stop glowing. They only stay bright for about 10 minutes. Ember stood up, wings slightly raised in what Pip had learned meant excitement. The hatchling's scales rippled with golden light. Pip made Ember close its eyes by covering them with his hands, then ran around hiding the seed pods. He tucked them under rocks, behind tree roots, and hollow logs. When he finished, he called out, "Okay, go." Ember took off like an arrow from a bow, nose to the ground. The hatchling found the first pod in seconds, then the second and third. But then something amazing happened. Instead of just searching randomly, Ember started using a pattern. The hatchling would find one pod, then turn in a circle, wings spread wide. The membrane of Ember's wings began to glow, and the hatchling seemed to be sensing where the other pods were hidden. "That's cheating," Pip yelled, but he was laughing. "How are you doing that?" Ember brought back all 10 pods in under 5 minutes, dropping them in a proud pile at Pip's feet. The hatchling's scales blazed with golden light so bright Pip had to squint. "Okay, your turn to hide them," Pip said. "Let me see what you can do." What happened next amazed him. Ember picked up each pod carefully in its mouth and flew to different hiding spots. But the hatchling didn't just hide them anywhere. Ember created a trail, a path that connected each hiding spot to the next. When Pip searched for them, he realized Ember had made a game that was half treasure hunt, half maze. "You're smarter than anyone knows," Pip said when he found the last pod. "Way smarter." As the sun began to set, Ember did something new. The hatchling began to hum, a sound that started deep in its chest and rose in pitch. The scales along Ember's body lit up in patterns, waves of color that moved from head to tail in rhythm with the humming. Pip sat down to watch, mesmerized. This wasn't just random movement. This was communication, he realized. This was language. Ember was trying to tell him something. He started humming too, copying the pattern Ember made. The hatchling's eyes widened in surprise. Then Ember hummed back with a slightly different tune. They went back and forth like this for several minutes, creating a strange musical conversation that neither fully understood, but both somehow felt. When darkness fell completely, Pip knew he had to leave. "Tomorrow," he promised Ember. "I'll come back tomorrow and we'll invent more games." Ember walked him to the edge of the forest as always, then stopped where the trees grew too thin for cover. The hatchling made the goodbye hum they had created together, a soft descending tone that meant until next time. As Pip jogged back to Green Hollow, he didn't notice the old woman watching from behind a storage shed. Ruth had been maintaining the colony's water systems for 15 years, and she knew every path and shortcut around the settlement. She had seen the boy sneak out 6 times now, always heading the same direction. Tomorrow she decided she would follow him, not to get him in trouble, but because Ruth remembered being young and lonely too. She remembered finding friendship in unexpected places, and she knew somehow that whatever Pip was hiding in those woods, it was important. The emergency sirens woke Pip in the middle of the night. He sat up in bed, heart pounding, as red lights flashed through his window. His mother burst through his door, her face tight with worry. "Stay inside," she said quickly. "Don't go near the windows." "What happened?" Pip asked. But she was already rushing down the hallway toward the command center. He crept to his door and listened to the voices echoing through the colony's corridors. Adults running, shouting orders, someone crying. Pip caught words like creature and attacked and weapons. His stomach dropped. Something had happened with the flame wings. By morning, the full story had spread through Green Hollow. A survey team had gone into the southern forest to collect samples. They had surprised an adult flamewing near a stream. The creature had reared up, wings spread, scales flashing red. The team leader panicked and fired his stun weapon. The flamewing had roared and fled into the sky, calling out sounds that echoed across the whole forest. No one was hurt, but now the colony director had declared the flamewings an active threat. She announced a hunting party would go out at dawn to eliminate any dangerous wildlife near the settlement. Pip felt sick. He pushed his breakfast around his plate, unable to eat. His father was talking about the hunting party, explaining to his mother why it was necessary to protect the colony. Neither of them noticed Pip slip away from the table. He ran toward the forest as fast as his legs could carry him. The fence had new guards posted, but they were looking outward, watching for threats coming in. They didn't see the small boy squeeze through the service gate and disappear into the purple trees. Pip reached the cave in record time, breathing hard and sweating. "Ember," he called out. "Ember, where are you?" The hatchling wasn't in the cave. Pip's chest tightened with fear. He ran outside, calling Ember's name over and over. Finally, he heard a familiar warbling sound from high in a tree. Ember sat on a thick branch, wings half spread, scales flickering between red and orange. The hatchling was staring toward the south, toward where the incident had happened. As Pip watched, Ember made a long, sad sound, then listened. In the distance, very faint, other flame wings called back. "You can hear them," Pip said, understanding flooding through him. "The other flame wings are out there, and they're scared." Ember climbed down the tree and landed next to Pip. The hatchling nuzzled against him, but its attention kept drifting southward. The calls came again, and Ember's whole body tensed. "You want to go to them," Pip said softly. "They're your family, aren't they? You need to find them." Ember looked at Pip with those glowing orange eyes, and the boy saw the conflict there. The hatchling took a step toward the south, then stopped and came back to Pip. Back and forth, torn between two needs. "Listen to me," Pip said urgently, kneeling down to be at Ember's eye level. "The colony is sending hunters. They're going to hurt any flame wings they find. You need to go warn the others. You need to hide." But even as he said it, Pip knew it was more complicated. If Ember left now, the hatchling might never come back, and Pip would be alone again. But worse than that, Ember might fly right into the hunting party. The hatchling didn't know how dangerous humans could be. Footsteps crunched through the underbrush behind them. Pip spun around, putting himself between Ember and whoever was coming. The hatchling scales flashed bright red, and a low growl rumbled in its throat. Ruth stepped into the clearing, her weathered hands raised to show she meant no harm. "Easy now," she said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. Stay back." Pip shouted, but his voice cracked with fear. Ruth stopped walking and slowly sat down on a fallen log. She looked at Ember with calm, interested eyes. "So this is where you've been running off to. I should have guessed. You were always the kind of kid who'd befriend a dragon." "It's not a dragon," Pip said defensively. "Ember's a flame wing and they're not dangerous. Not unless you attack them first." "I believe you," Ruth said simply. "I've been watching you two play for the last week. That little one there has a good heart, I can tell." Ember's scales shifted to orange, the danger color fading. The hatchling tilted its head at Ruth, curious now instead of scared. "You followed me?" Pip asked. "I did. And it's a good thing too, because you're in trouble, boy. Both of you are." Ruth leaned forward, her expression serious. "I heard the hunting party plans this morning. 20 armed colonists leaving at dawn tomorrow. They're going to sweep the southern sector first, then work their way around the whole forest. We have to stop them," Pip said desperately. "Can't stop them," Ruth replied. "But maybe we can change their minds. Maybe we can show them what you've shown me, that these creatures aren't monsters." Pip shook his head. "They won't listen." The director already decided. "She thinks all flame wings are dangerous. Then we'll have to prove her wrong." Ruth stood up and walked closer, moving slowly so she wouldn't spook Ember. "What if we brought your friend here to the colony? What if we showed everyone that flame wings can be peaceful, that they're smart and can be trusted?" "They'd shoot Ember," Pip cried. "The second they saw—" "Not if we do it right," Ruth interrupted. "Not if we show them what you've taught this little one. Those games you play, the way you communicate. If people see a flame wing playing fetch like a pet dog, following commands, being gentle with a child, that's pretty hard to call dangerous." Ember warbled softly and pressed against Pip's side. The hatchling's scales were bright gold now, pulsing in waves. Pip stroked Ember's neck, thinking hard. "It's risky," he said. "Everything worth doing is risky," Ruth answered. "But what's the alternative? The hunting party finds your friend or finds the other flame wings and people get hurt on both sides. Or we do nothing and these two species keep being afraid of each other forever." In the distance, the flame wing call sounded again. Ember lifted its head and called back, a long musical sound that carried through the forest. The adult flame wings answered, and this time they sounded closer. "They're coming this way," Ruth said, her eyes widening. "The adults. They're looking for the little one." Pip felt torn in a dozen directions. He wanted to keep Ember safe, but he couldn't let the hunting party hurt the other flame wings either. He wanted his friend to find its family, but he didn't want to lose the only real friendship he'd found on this world. "We have to try," he said finally. "We have to show them. Tomorrow morning, before the hunting party leaves. We'll bring Ember to the colony square." Ruth nodded slowly. "That's brave of you, kid. Really brave. And really stupid, but sometimes brave and stupid are the same thing." She held out her hand to Ember. The hatchling sniffed her fingers, then gently pressed its snout into her palm. Ruth smiled, her old eyes crinkling at the corners. "Tomorrow, then," she said. "We're going to change some minds, or we're going to get in a whole lot of trouble. Maybe both." Dawn broke over Green Hollow with pink and orange light that made the purple forest look like it was on fire. Pip hadn't slept at all. He'd spent the night in the cave with Ember, telling the hatchling the plan over and over, hoping somehow that Ember understood how important this was. Ruth arrived just as the first sun cleared the horizon. She brought rope, not to tie Ember up, but to make it look like they had the hatchling under control. A leash, she called it, though Pip hated the idea. "People fear what they can't control," Ruth explained as she showed Pip how to loop the rope gently around Ember's neck. "If they see you walking the creature like a pet, they'll be less likely to shoot first." Ember didn't like the rope, scales flashing red and orange in distress. But when Pip held it and started walking, the hatchling calmed down. They had practiced this game before, Ember following Pip wherever he went. The rope was just for show. The walk back to the colony took longer than usual. Pip's legs felt heavy, and his hands shook every time he heard a sound in the forest. Ember stayed close to his side, sensing his fear and matching it with the hatchling's own nervous energy. They reached the edge of the forest just as voices rose from the colony center. The hunting party was gathering. Pip could see them through the trees. 20 adults in protective gear carrying stun weapons and tranquilizer guns. The colony director stood on a platform giving instructions. "Last chance to turn back," Ruth said quietly. "Once we step out there, there's no hiding this anymore." Pip looked down at Ember. The hatchling looked back at him with those trusting orange eyes. All those afternoons playing in the cave, teaching each other games, learning to understand each other without words. This was bigger than both of them now. "Let's go," Pip said. They stepped out of the forest and into the colony square. For a moment, nobody noticed them. Then a woman screamed. All 20 hunters spun around, weapons raising instantly. The crowd of colonists who had gathered to see off the hunting party scattered in panic. Someone's child started crying. The director's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Everyone get back. Armed team, prepare to fire. No," Pip shouted, his voice cracking. He stepped in front of Ember, spreading his arms wide. "Don't shoot. Please don't shoot." His parents pushed through the crowd, his mother's face white with horror. "Pip, get away from that thing." "Her name is Ember," Pip yelled back. "And she's not a thing. She's my friend." The hunters held their fire, but their weapons stayed trained on Ember. The hatchling's scales blazed red with fear, and Pip could feel Ember trembling behind him. But the hatchling didn't run and didn't attack. Just stayed pressed against Pip's back, trusting him. Ruth stepped forward, her hands raised. "Everyone just calm down and listen. This boy has something to show you all, something important about these creatures you're so ready to kill. That thing is dangerous," the director shouted from her platform. "It needs to be contained immediately." "Is it?" Ruth challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, the only one pointing weapons is us. That little hatchling there has had plenty of chances to hurt this boy, and it never has. Not once." Pip's father pushed forward, trying to reach his son, but Ruth blocked his path. "Let the boy speak. You owe him that much." The director made a sharp gesture, and the hunters lowered their weapons slightly. Though they kept them ready, Pip felt Ember relax just a little behind him. "Ember isn't dangerous," Pip said, his voice steadier now. "She's smart and kind and playful. I've been visiting her for weeks, and we've become friends. I taught her games, and she taught me things too. Watch." He turned to Ember and held up the rubber ball he'd brought from the cave. "Ember, catch." He tossed the ball gently. Ember's eyes tracked it, and the hatchling caught it perfectly in its mouth, then brought it back to Pip and dropped it at his feet. A few people in the crowd gasped. "Again!" Pip called, throwing it farther this time. Ember bounded after it, wings spreading for balance, and brought it back again. The hatchling's scales shifted from red to orange, fear giving way to the joy of playing a familiar game. "That's just training," someone in the crowd muttered. "Dogs can fetch too." "Then watch this," Pip said. He pulled out 3 of the glowing seed pods from his pocket. "Ember, hide and seek." The hatchling's scales flashed gold with excitement. Pip made a show of covering Ember's eyes while he hid the pods around the square, tucking them under benches and behind storage containers. When he gave the signal, Ember took off, using that pattern-searching method the hatchling had invented. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Ember found all 3 pods in under 2 minutes. "It's following scent," the director said dismissively. "That proves nothing about intelligence." Pip felt frustration rising in his chest. "Then listen to this." He began to hum the pattern he and Ember had created together, their goodbye song. Ember's head lifted and the hatchling hummed back, perfectly matching his tune. Then Ember added a new part, a higher melody that wove around Pip's notes. They went back and forth like this, creating a harmony that echoed across the square. The crowd had gone completely quiet. Even the hunters had lowered their weapons fully now, watching in amazement. "That's language," Ruth said into the silence. "That's communication. That right there is proof of intelligence, of culture. You're not looking at an animal. You're looking at a person." Pip's mother stepped forward slowly, her scientist mind overriding her fear. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked Pip softly. 3 weeks, Pip admitted. Ember was hurt and alone. Her family left her behind somehow. I just wanted to help, and then we became friends. His mother knelt down, studying Ember from a safe distance. The patterns on its scales, they're changing with the music. That's not just color change, that's intentional display, deliberate communication. Other colonists crept closer now, curiosity winning over fear. Children peeked out from behind their parents, eyes wide with wonder. Ember sat calmly next to Pip, scales glowing soft gold, letting them look. Then the director's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "It's still dangerous. It's a trained specimen at best. not proof that the entire species is safe. The hunting party proceeds as planned. No, Pip said firmly. You can't. I'm not debating this with a child, she stopped mid-sentence. Every person in the square had turned to look at the forest behind Pip and Ember. A sound was building in the trees, a harmonic call that grew louder and louder. The branches rustled and shapes moved in the purple canopy. Then they emerged. Dozens of them, adult flame wings, each one 3 times the size of Ember, stepping out of the forest and spreading their massive wings. Their scales blazed with light, reds and oranges and golds that lit up the morning like dozens of bonfires. The hunters raised their weapons again, but their hands were shaking. The colonists backed away in terror, but Pip noticed something nobody else seemed to see. The adult flame wings weren't attacking. They were just watching, their enormous eyes fixed on the small hatchling in the center of the square. Ember called out to them, a long musical sound filled with urgency. The largest flame wing, its scales deep crimson with age, called back. And then slowly, deliberately, it began to descend toward the colony square. Toward Pip and Ember. Toward the terrified humans. The massive flame wing landed 30 feet from where Pip stood, and the ground shook with the impact. This close, Pip could see every detail of the creature. Scales that looked like molten metal, each one the size of his hand. Wings that could have wrapped around his entire house. Claws that could tear through steel. Eyes that glowed like embers in a forge. But those eyes weren't angry. They were sad. Nobody move, the director hissed into her communicator. Hold your fire unless it attacks. The giant flame wing lowered its head to the ground, making itself smaller, less threatening. It made a sound, a deep rumbling hum that Pip felt in his bones. Ember chirped back a high excited sound, and Pip felt the rope go tight as the hatchling strained forward. It's okay, Pip whispered, loosening the rope. Go on. Ember didn't need to be told twice. The hatchling bounded across the square and pressed against the adult's massive leg. The big flame wing curved its neck down and gently nuzzled Ember. Scales flickering through colors so fast they blurred together. The sounds they made to each other were soft and musical, clearly words in a language humans had never bothered to learn. Ruth took a step forward, and Pip grabbed her arm. What are you doing? Something stupid again, she said with a slight smile. But it worked once, didn't it? She walked slowly toward the 2 flame wings, her weathered hands visible and empty. The adult turned its huge head toward her, and Pip's heart hammered in his chest. But Ruth didn't stop. She made the same calming gesture she'd seen Pip use with Ember, a slow downward motion with both hands. The adult flame wing's eyes widened in what looked like recognition. It made a questioning sound, almost like surprise. Ruth did the gesture again, then pointed at Pip. The giant creature's gaze shifted to the boy. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then deliberately the flame wing bent its massive neck and touched its snout gently to Pip's head. The scales were warm and smooth, and Pip smelled something like cinnamon and smoke. It's thanking you, Ruth said softly. This is Ember's parent. They've been searching for their lost child. Pip's mother stepped forward then, her fear overcome by scientific curiosity and wonder. How do you know that? Look at them, Ruth said, gesturing to Ember and the adult. Look at how they're communicating. The scale patterns, the sounds, the body language. This isn't random. This is sophisticated social behavior. The colony's xenobiologist, a woman named Dr. Winters, who usually stayed in the lab, pushed through the crowd. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a recording device. The color patterns correspond to the sound frequencies, she breathed. They're using multiple channels of communication simultaneously. Visual, auditory, possibly even thermal with those heat-producing scales. This is incredible. The adult flame wing turned to face the colony crowd. Every human tensed, ready to run. But instead of attacking, the creature did something extraordinary. It began to perform. The flame wing spread its wings wide, scales lighting up in patterns that flowed like water across its body. Colors Pip had never seen Ember make rippled through the adult's scales, deep purples and blues mixing with the reds and golds. At the same time, it made sounds, layered harmonics that seemed to come from multiple places in its body at once. It's a display, Dr. Winters whispered, her recording device forgotten in her hand. Like a bird's mating dance, but more complex. Much more complex. I think it's introducing itself. The adult finished its display and settled back, folding its wings. It looked at the humans expectantly, waiting. It wants us to respond, Pip's mother said. It's trying to communicate formally. This is first contact. Real first contact. The director stood frozen on her platform, her face pale. All her certainty about dangerous wildlife had crumbled in the face of what everyone could now clearly see was a thinking, feeling, sophisticated being. Ruth nudged Pip forward. You started this. You should answer. Pip's mind raced. How did you introduce yourself to an alien species? Then he remembered all those afternoons in the cave, teaching Ember games and learning the hatchling's language. He started to hum their shared song, the melody he and Ember had created together. The adult Flamewing's eyes brightened with what could only be joy. It hummed back, adding depth and complexity to the simple tune Pip had made. Ember joined in, creating a three-part harmony that made the air seem to vibrate. Other Flamewings emerged from the forest now, moving slowly into the square. They were all sizes, from juveniles barely bigger than Ember to massive adults that dwarfed even the first one. They arranged themselves in a semicircle, non-threatening but impossible to ignore. They're showing us their community, Dr. Winters said, her voice filled with awe. Their family structure. Look, those smaller ones are protecting the juveniles. That's parental behavior. Social organization. They've been here all along, right next to us, and we never knew. We never tried to know, Pip's mother corrected quietly. We just assumed they were animals because they looked scary. The largest Flamewing made another display, this one slower and more deliberate. It gestured with its wings toward the forest, toward the sky, toward Green Hollow Colony. Then it touched Ember gently and made a specific sound, a rising tone that ended with a sharp note. That's a question, Ruth said with certainty. It's asking something, Pip understood suddenly. They want to know if we're going to hurt them. If we're going to hurt Ember. They've been watching us for weeks, just like we've been watching them. They saw me playing with Ember. They know we can be kind, but they also know we brought out weapons this morning. He stepped forward until he was right in front of the massive Flamewing. His parents made sounds of protest, but he ignored them. He was scared, terrified really, but this was too important. We won't hurt you, Pip said clearly, looking into those glowing eyes. Some of us were afraid, but that's just because we didn't understand. We'll do better. I promise we'll try to understand. The Flamewing held his gaze for a long moment. Then it did something that made the entire colony gasp. It spoke not in human language, of course, but the sounds it made were carefully shaped, deliberately chosen. It repeated words Pip had said to Ember in the cave, words the adult must have heard while watching from the shadows. Simple words. Friend. Play. Tomorrow. Tears streamed down Pip's face. Yes, he whispered. Friends. We can be friends. The adult touched its snout to his chest, right over his heart. Its scales glowed warm gold, the color of happiness and trust. Then it turned to face the director and made the most complex display yet. A full-body performance that lasted several minutes. Dr. Winters was frantically taking notes. It's laying out terms, boundaries, territorial markers. This is a treaty. Right here, right now. We're witnessing the negotiation of a peace treaty between two intelligent species. The director finally found her voice. It shook when she spoke. Call off the hunting party. All weapons to be secured immediately. And someone get me every xenolinguist and cultural anthropologist on this moon. We have a lot of work to do. The tension in the square broke like a wave. Colonists started talking all at once, some excited, some still scared, all amazed. The Flamewings remained calm, watching the humans with patient eyes. Ember trotted back to Pip and pressed against his leg. The hatchling's scales pulsed with pure golden joy. Pip knelt down and wrapped his arms around his friend's neck. You found your family, he said softly. I'm so happy for you. Ember made a questioning sound and gestured between Pip and the adult Flamewings. The meaning was clear. They were all family now. All of them. 3 months had changed everything about Green Hollow Colony. Where there had once been high fences and guards, there were now open pathways that both humans and Flamewings used freely. The storage building near the forest edge had been converted into what everyone called the Translation House, where Dr. Winters and her team worked with Flamewing elders to build the first real dictionary between their species. Pip sat on the roof of his family quarters, watching the sun set over the purple forest. Next to him, Ember had grown noticeably bigger, now the size of a large horse instead of a dog. The hatchling's wings were stronger, capable of carrying Ember high into the sky for hours at a time. But Ember still came to visit every afternoon just like always. Below them in the colony square, something wonderful was happening. A group of human children played with young flame wings, all of them engaged in the game Pip had invented 3 months ago. It combined human hide-and-seek with the flame wings' pattern-sensing abilities and their light communication. The rules were complex, requiring teamwork between species to win. A small human girl named Lily rode on the back of a juvenile flame wing, laughing as they searched for glowing seed pods hidden around the square. Another boy traded scale pattern signals with his flame wing partner, trying to coordinate their search. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. "Your mom says the game has a name in both languages now," Ruth said, climbing up the ladder to join them on the roof. She moved slower these days, her old bones complaining, but her spirit was livelier than ever. She'd become the chief liaison between species, translating not just words but intentions and cultural differences. "What do the flame wings call it?" Pip asked. "Something that roughly means the joining game, or maybe the first friendship game." Dr. Winters is still working out the exact translation. Ruth settled down next to them with a satisfied grunt. "But the point is, it's spreading. We got word from the northern settlement that they've made contact with a different Flamewing clan, and the first thing they asked for was to learn your game." Pip felt his cheeks warm with embarrassment. "It's not my game. Ember helped invent it." Ember chirped in agreement and bumped Pip with one scaled shoulder, a gesture that meant affection in Flamewing body language. Ruth pulled out a tablet and showed Pip the screen. "Your parents wanted me to show you this. It's a proposal they're submitting to the colonial administration on Earth." Pip read the document slowly. It was full of big words and scientific terms, but the basic idea was clear. His parents wanted to establish a permanent research station on Silvara 9, dedicated to studying Flamewing culture and facilitating peaceful coexistence. They wanted to train people in cross-species communication. They wanted to make sure what happened here could happen on other worlds where humans and aliens met. "They're calling it the Ember Initiative," Ruth said with a small smile. "Named after your friend here. If it gets approved, Green Hollow won't be just another colony outpost. It'll be humanity's first real embassy to another intelligent species." Pip's throat felt tight. "Will it work? Can humans and flame wings really live together?" "You tell me," Ruth said, gesturing to the scene below. "Looks like it's working pretty well already." She was right. In just 3 months, fear had transformed into curiosity, and curiosity into friendship. The flame wings had shown humans their sacred nesting sites in the deep forest. Humans had shared their technology and medicine, healing injuries and sicknesses that had plagued the Flamewing clans for generations. Both species were learning, growing, changing. There had been problems, of course. Last month, a young Flamewing had accidentally started a fire near the colony's food storage. And 2 weeks ago, a human teenager had insulted a Flamewing elder without understanding the cultural meaning of the gesture he'd made. But both incidents had been resolved through communication and patience, not violence. "I was lonely before," Pip said quietly. "I hated it here. I wanted to go back to Earth. And now?" Ruth asked. Pip looked at Ember, then down at the children playing together in the square, then out at the forest where both species now lived side by side. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. This is home." Ember made a long musical sound and Pip recognized it immediately. It was the word the Flamewings used for family, but not just blood family. The larger concept of belonging, of community, of finding your place among others who understood you. Movement in the sky caught Pip's attention. The massive Flamewing who had first approached the colony, Ember's parent, soared overhead with 3 other adults. They were heading toward the western ridge, where a new human survey team was scheduled to arrive tomorrow. The Flamewings would greet them first, making the formal introduction before the newcomers ever reached Green Hollow. "That's the 4th new team this month," Pip noted. "Word's getting out." "That it is," Ruth agreed. "Scientists, diplomats, even artists want to come study what's happening here. You started something big, kid. You and your stubborn refusal to be scared of something different." "I was scared," Pip admitted. "That first day in the cave, I was terrified. But Ember was scared too, and lonely, just like me." Ember curled around Pip protectively, scales glowing that warm orange that meant contentment and love. The hatchling that had once fit in a small cave now needed half the roof to get comfortable. but the bond between boy and Flamewing hadn't changed. If anything, it had grown stronger. Pip's mother climbed up to the roof, bringing sandwiches and fruit. She'd been in meetings all day with Flamewing elders, discussing the proposal for the embassy. She looked exhausted but happy. The council approved it, she said, sitting down next to her son. The Ember Initiative is officially going forward. We're going to build a proper facility for cross-species studies, training programs for both humans and Flamewings, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. All of it because of Pip's game? Ruth asked with a knowing smile. Because of everything, his mother replied. The game, yes, but also the trust that was built here. The willingness to try, to learn, to admit when we were wrong. She looked at her son with pride that made his eyes sting. We came to Silvara 9 to study plants. Instead, we found neighbors, partners, friends. Down in the square, someone had started playing music, and the Flamewings were teaching the humans one of their traditional dances. It involved a lot of wing flapping and jumping that looked absolutely ridiculous when humans tried it. But everyone was laughing too hard to care. Little Lily fell off her Flamewing partner's back and landed in a pile of purple moss. Instead of crying, she laughed even harder. The young Flamewing gently picked her up with its mouth and set her back on her feet, scales flashing with the color that meant apology and concern. Lily hugged its leg and they continued dancing. That's it right there, Pip said, pointing. That's what everyone else needs to see. Not the science or the politics. Just kids playing together. Just friendship. From the mouths of children, Ruth murmured. You know what the Flamewings say about you now? Dr. Winters translated it this morning. They call you the small human who speaks with his heart. It's a term of great respect in their culture. Ember chirped proudly and nuzzled Pip's hair, nearly knocking him over. The hatchling was still clumsy sometimes, still learning how to control a body that was growing fast. But Pip didn't mind. He'd learned to roll with the bumps, literally. As darkness fell, the bioluminescent plants in the forest began to glow. The Flamewings added their own light, scales shimmering in patterns that created moving art across the landscape. Someone brought out lanterns from the colony, and soon human light and Flamewing light mixed together, making something entirely new. The music changed to a melody that incorporated both human instruments and Flamewing harmonics. It was the goodbye song, the one Pip and Ember had created together in that cave so long ago. But it had evolved, grown more complex as both species added their own variations. Now it wasn't just a goodbye song. It was an anthem, a promise, a celebration of everything they'd built together. Pip stood up on the roof and added his voice to the music. Ember stood next to him, wings spread wide, adding harmonics and light patterns. Ruth sang in her rough old voice. His mother hummed along while marking notes on her tablet. Below, the whole colony joined in, humans and Flamewings together. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Pip felt completely, perfectly home. The lonely hatchling had found someone to play with. The lonely boy had found a friend. And in that simple beginning, two species had found a future together. The music rose into the night sky above Silvara 9, carrying across the purple forests and the glowing valleys, a sound that spoke of hope and friendship and the wonderful things that can happen when someone chooses to reach across the space between them and simply say hello.